This is going to be me reading chapter 14 to 16. It was much the same, this memory, though the hill seemed to be different, one steeper, and the snow was not falling as thickly as it had before. It was colder, also, Jonas perceived. He could see, as he sat waiting at the top of the hill, that the snow beneath the sledge was not thick and soft as it had been before, but hard and coated with bluish ice. The sledge moved forward, and Jonas grinned with delight, looking forward to the breathtaking slide down the invigorating air. But the runners this time couldn't slice through the frozen expanse as they had on the other snow-cushioned hill. They skittered sideways, and the sledge gathered speed. Jonas pulled at the rope trying to steer, but the steepness and speed took control from his hands, and he was no longer enjoying the feeling of freedom, but instead terrified, was at the mercy of the wild acceleration downwards over the ice. Sideways spinning, the sledge hit a bump in the hill, and Jonas was jarred loose and thrown violently into the air. He fell with his leg twisted under him and could hear the crack of bone. His face scraped along jagged edges of ice when he came at last to a stop. He lay shocked and still, feeling nothing at first but fear, then the first wave of pain. He gasped. It was as if a hatchet lay lodged in his leg, slicing through each nerve with a hot blade. In his agony he perceived the word fire, and felt flames licking at the torn bone and flesh. He tried to move and could not. The pain grew. He screamed. There was no answer. Sobbing, he turned his head and vomited onto the frozen snow. Blood dripped from his face into the vomit. No, he cried, and the sound disappeared into the empty landscape, into the wind. Then, suddenly, he was in the annex room again, writhing on the bed. His face was wet with tears. Able to move now, he rocked his own body back and forth, breathing deeply to release the remembered pain. Committee of elders when they call upon me. But what wisdom do you get from hunger? Jonas groaned. His stomach still hurt, through the memory had ended. Some years ago, the giver told him, before your birth, a lot of citizens petitioned the committee of elders. They wanted to increase the rate of births. They wanted each birth mother to be assigned 4 births instead of 3, so that the population would increase and there would be more laborers available. Jonas nodded, listening. That makes sense. The idea was that certain family units could accommodate an additional child. Jonas nodded again. Mine could, he pointed out. We have Gabriel this year, and it's fun having a 3rd child. The committee of elders sought my advice, the giver said. It made sense to them, too, but it was a new idea, and they came to me for wisdom. And use your memories. The giver said yes, and the strongest memory that came was hunger. It came from many generations back, centuries back. The population had got so big that hunger was everywhere. Excruciating hunger and starvation. It was followed by warfare. Warfare was a concept Jonas did not know, but hunger was familiar to him now. Incautiously he rubbed his own abdomen, recalling the pain of his unfulfilled needs. So he described that to them. They don't want to hear about pain, they just seek the advice. I simply advised them against increasing the population, but he said that was before my birth. They hardly ever come to you for advice, only when what was it you said? When they have a problem they've never faced before. When did it last happen? Do you remember the day when the plane flew over the community? Yes, I was scared. So were they. They prepared to shoot it down. But they sought out my advice. I told them to wait. But how did you know? How did you know the pilot was lost? I didn't. I used my wisdom from the memories. I knew that there had been times in the past, terrible times, when people had destroyed others in haste and fear and had brought about their own destruction. Jonas realized something. That means, he said slowly, that you have memories of destruction. You have to give them to me, too, because I have to get the wisdom. Giver nodded. But it will hurt, Jonas said. It wasn't a question. It will hurt terribly, the giver agreed. It probably won't happen again for a long time anyway. He sighed. They won't make the decision for a while. Right now we're all preparing for release. We'll probably have to make very soon. There's a birth mother who's expecting twin males next month. "Oh dear," his mother said, shaking her head. "If they're identical, I hope you're not the one assigned." "I am. I'm next on the list. I'll have to select the one to be nurtured, and the one to be released. It's usually not hard, though. Usually just a matter of birth weight." Release the smaller of the two. Jonas, listening, thought suddenly about the bridge, and how standing there he had wondered what lay elsewhere. Was there someone there waiting who would receive the tiny released twin? Would it grow up elsewhere, not knowing ever that in this community lived a being who looked exactly the same? For a moment he felt a tiny fluttering hope that he knew was quite foolish. He hoped that it would be Larissa, waiting. Larissa, the old woman he had bathed. He remembered her sparkling eyes, her soft voice, her low chuckle. Fiona had told him recently that Larissa had been released at a wonderful ceremony, but he knew that the old were not given children to raise. Larissa's life elsewhere would be quiet and serene as befitted the old. She would not welcome the responsibility of nurturing a new child who needed feeding and care, and would likely cry at night. "Mother, father," he said, the idea coming to him unexpectedly, "why don't we put Gabriel's crib in my room tonight? I know how to feed and comfort him, and we'll let you and father get some sleep." Father looked doubtful. "You sleep so soundly, Jonas. What if his restlessness didn't wake you?" It was Lily who answered that. "If no one goes to tend Gabriel," she pointed out, "he gets very loud. He'd wake all of us, if Jonas slept through it." Father laughed. "You're right, Lily, Billy, all right. Jonas, let's try it, just for tonight. I'll take the night off and we'll let Mother get some sleep too." Gabriel slept soundly for the earliest part of the night. Jonas in his bed lay awake for a while. From time to time he raised himself on one elbow, looking over at the crib. The new child was on his stomach, his arms relaxed beside his head, his eyes closed, and his breathing regular and undisturbed. Finally Jonas slept too. Then, as the middle hours of the night approached, the noise of Gabe's restlessness woke Jonas. The new child was turning under his cover, flailing his arms, and beginning to whimper. Jonas rose and went to him. Gently he patted Gabriel's back, sometimes that was all took to lull him back to sleep, but the new child still squirmed fretfully under his hand. Still patting rhythmically, Jonas began to remember that wonderful sail that the giver had given to him not long before, a bright breezy day on a clear turquoise lake, and above him the white sail of the boat billowing as he moved along in the brisk wind. He was not aware of giving the memory, but suddenly he realized that it was becoming dimmer, that it was sliding through his hand into the being of the new child. Gabriel became quiet. Startled, Jonas pulled back what was left of the memory with a burst of will. He removed his hand from the little back and stood quietly beside the crib. To himself he called the memory of the sail forward again. It was still there, but the sky was less blue, the gentle motion of the boat slower, the water of the lake more murky and clouded. He kept it for a while, soothing his own nervousness at what had occurred, then let it go and returned to his bed. Once more, towards dawn, the new child woke and cried out again. Again Jonas went to him. This time he quite deliberately placed his hands firmly on Gabriel's back and released the rest of the calming day on the lake. Again Gabriel slept. But now Jonas lay awake, thinking. He no longer had any more than a wisp of a memory. He felt a small lack where it had been. He could ask the giver from another sail he knew. A sail perhaps on an ocean next time. For Jonas had a memory of ocean now, and knew what it was. He knew that there were sailboats there, too, in memories yet to be acquired. He wondered, though, if he should confess to the giver that he had given a memory away. He was not yet qualified to be a giver himself, nor had Gabriel been selected to be a receiver. That he had this power frightened him. He decided not to tell. Chapter 15. Jonas entered the annex room and realized immediately that it was a day when he would be sent away. The giver was rigid in his chair, his face in his hands. "I'll come back tomorrow, sir," he said quickly. Then he hesitated. "Maybe there's something I can do to help." The giver looked at him, his face contoured with suffering. "Please," he gasped, "take some of the pain." Jonas helped him to his chair at the side of the bed. Then he quickly removed his tunic and lay face down. "Put your hands on me," he directed, aware that in such anguish the giver might need reminding. The hands came, and the pain came with them, and through them. Jonas braced himself and entered the memory which was torturing the giver. He was in a confused, noisy, foul-smelling place. It was daylight, early morning, and the air was thick with smoke that hung yellow and brown above the ground. Around him, everywhere, far across the expanse of what seemed to be a field, lay groaning men. A wild-eyed horse, its bridle torn and dangling, trotted frantically through the mounds of men, tossing its head, whining in panic. It stumbled, finally, then fell and did not rise. Jonas heard a voice next to him. Water, the voice said in a parched, croaking whisper. He turned his head towards the voice and looked into the half-closed eyes of the boy, who seemed not much older than himself. Dirt streaked the boy's face and his matted blond hair. He lay sprawled, his gray uniform glistening with wet flesh blood. The colors of the carnage were gristically bright, to crimson wetness on the rough and dusty fabric, the ripped shreds of grass startling green in the boy's yellow hair. The boy stared at him. Water, he begged again. When he spoke, a new spurt of blood drenched the coarse cloth across his chest and sleeve. One of Jonas's arm was immobilized with pain, and he could see through his own torn sleeve something that looked like racked flesh and splintery bone. He tried to his remaining arm and felt it move. Slowly he reached to his side, felt the metal container there, and removed his cap, stopping the small motion of his hand now and then to wait for the surging pain to ease. Finally, when the container was open, he extended his arm slowly across the blood-soaked earth, inch by inch, and held it to the lips of the boy. Water trickled into the imploring mouth and down the grimy chin. The boy sighed. His head fell back, his lower jaw dropping as if he had been surprised by something. A dull blankness slid slowly across his eye. He was silent, but the noise continued all around. The cries of the wounded men. The cries begging for water and for mother and for death. Horses lying on the ground shrieked, raised their heads, and stabbed randomly towards the sky with their hooves. From the distance, Jonas could hear the thud of cannons. Overwhelmed by pain, he lay there in the fearsome stench for hours, listened to the men and animals die, and learned what warfare meant. Finally, when he knew that he could bear it no longer and would welcome death himself, he opened his eyes and was once again on the bed. The giver looked away as if he could not bear to see what he had done to Jonas. "Forgive me," he said. Jonas did not want to go back. He didn't want the memories, didn't want the honor, didn't want the wisdom, didn't want the pain. He wanted his childhood again, his scraped knees and ball games. He sat in his dwelling alone, watching through the window, seeing children at play, citizens bicycling home from uneventful days at work, ordinary lives free of anguish, because he had been selected, as others before him had, to bear their burden. But the choice was not his. He returned each day to the annex room. The giver was gentle with him for many days following the terrible shared memory of war. There are so many good memories, the giver reminded, and it was true. By now Jonas had experienced countless bits of happiness, things he had never known of before. He had seen a birthday party with one child singled out and celebrated on his day, so that now he understood the joy of being an individual, special and unique and proud. He had visited museums and seen paintings with all the colors. He could now recognize a name. In one ecstatic memory he had ridden a gleaming brown horse across a field that smelled of the damp grass, and had dismounted beside a small stream of water, from which both he and the horse drank cold, clear water. Now he understood about animals, and in the moment that the horse turned from the stream and nudged Jonas's shoulder affectionately with his head, he perceived the bond between animal and human. He had walked through woods and sat at night beside a campfire, although he had through the memories learned about the pain of loss and loneliness. Now he gained too an understanding of solitude and its joy. "What is your favorite?" Jonas asked the giver. "You don't have to give it away yet," he added quickly. "Just tell me about it so I can look forward to it, because I'll have to receive it when your job is done." The giver smiled. "Lie down," he said. "I'm happy to give it to you." Jonas felt the joy of it as soon as the memory began. Sometimes it took a while for him to get to his bearings, to find his place, but this time he fitted right in and felt the happiness that pervaded the memory. He was in a room filled with people and was warm with firelight glowing on a hearth. You could see through a window that outside it was night and snowing. There were colored lights, red and green and yellow, and twinkling from a tree which was oddly out inside the room. On a table, lighted candles stood in a polished golden holder and cast a soft flickering glow. He could smell things cooking and he heard soft laughter. A golden-haired dog lay sleeping on the floor. On the floor there were packages wrapped in brightly colored paper and tied with gleaming ribbons. As Jonas watched, a small child began to pick up the packages and pass them around the room to other children, to adults who were obviously parents, and to an older, quiet couple, man and woman, who sat smiling together on a couch. While Jonas watched, the people began one by one to untie the ribbons on the packages, to unwrap the bright papers, open the boxes, reveal toys and clothing and books. There were cries of delight. They hugged one another. Still, he said slowly, almost to himself, I did like the light they made and the warmth. Father, mother? Jonas asked tentatively after the evening meal. I have a question I want to ask you. What is it, Jonas? His father asked. He made himself say the words. Though he felt flushed with embarrassment, he had rehearsed them in his mind all the way home from the annex. Do you love me? There was an awkward silence for a moment. Then father gave a little chuckle. Jonas, you of all people, precision of language, please. What do you mean? Jonas asked. Amusement was not at all what he had anticipated. Your father means that you used a very generalized word, so meaningless that it's almost become obsolete, his mother explained carefully. Jonas stared at me. Meaningless? He had never before felt anything as meaningful as the memory. And of course, our community can't function smoothly if people don't use precise language. You could ask, do you enjoy me? The answer is yes, his mother said. Or, his father suggested, do you take pride in my accomplishments? And the answer is wholeheartedly yes. Do you understand why it's inappropriate to use a word like love? Mother asked. Jonas nodded. Yes, thank you, I do. He replied slowly. It was his first lie to his parents. Gabriel, Jonas whispered that night to the new child. The crib was in his room again. After Gabe had slept soundly in Jonas's room for 4 nights, his parents had pronounced the experiment a success and Jonas a hero. Gabriel was growing rapidly and now crawling and giggling across the room and pulling himself up to stand. He could be upgraded in the nurturing center. Father said happily, now that he slept, he could officially be named and given to his family in December, which was only 2 months away. But when he was taken away, he stopped sleeping again and cried in the night. So he was back in Jonas' sleeping room. They would give it a little more time, they decided, since Gabe seemed to like it in Jonas' room. He would sleep there at night a little longer, until the habit of sound sleep was fully formed. The nurturers were very optimistic about Gabriel's future. There was no answer to Jonas's whisper. Gabriel was sound asleep. Things could change, Gabe, Jonas went on. Things could be different. I don't know how, but there must be some way for things to be different. There could be colors, and grandparents, he added, staring through the dimness towards the ceiling of his sleeping room. And everybody would have memories. You know about memories? He whispered, turning towards the crib. Gabriel's breathing was even and deep. Jonas liked having him there, though he felt guilty about the secret. Each night he gave memories to Gabriel. Memories of boat rides and picnics in the sun. Memories of soft rainfall and against window panes. Memories of dancing barefoot on a damp lawn. Gabe, the new child, stirred slightly in his sleep. Jonas looked over at him. There could be love, Jonas whispered. The next morning, for the first time, Jonas did not take his pills. Something within him, something that had grown there through the memories, told him to throw the pill away. That's the end of chapter 16.